Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the content patch for the 6th of May 2013. My name is TotalBiscuit with today's gaming news and comment. My apologies that we didn't have an episode on Thursday and Friday. Bunch of reasons for that, don't really want to go into them right now. Anyway, what's going on in the show today? TimeGate Studios files for bankruptcy protection. Fifth Cell and Warner Brothers being sued by the creators of Nyan and Keyboard Cat. No, I couldn't make this crap up. Esports League ESEA has been using subscribers' computers to mine bitcoins. Sony execs give up bonuses for the second year running, and Call of Duty Ghosts headed to next-generation platforms. All this in the OC Remix track of the day coming your way right now. The developer of Section 8 and the company that was responsible for working on a significant part of Aliens Colonial Marines has filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection in Texas. According to the petition made by TimeGate, there is between $10 and $50 million worth of liabilities to a variety of creditors, including the company South Peak Interactive, who were the publishers of Section 8. Now, recently, they had been embroiled in a legal battle, and this alleged that TimeGate apparently had not invested enough of its own capital into the game's development, while TimeGate alleged that South Peak had withheld royalties and failed to follow through with responsibilities. Now, unfortunately for TimeGate, South Peak was in fact successful in that lawsuit, and they were awarded $7.35 million in compensation. They also lost the license to Section 8, which was really their main game, although that decision was overturned last year. Now, TimeGate has been working on a title called Minimum, which is something of a blocky, minimalist first-person shooter. I think I showed a trailer of that actually on the Game Session podcast a few weeks ago. But there are a number of different creditors involved in this particular bankruptcy, which include Epic Games for the Unreal Engine, Agora Games, who are an online gaming service provider, as well as a local pizzeria that they owe $34 to. Well, I mean, I can pay that off for them. I don't think the pizzeria should be really punished for this kind of nonsense, but this is a really sucky position, I feel. I know TimeGate doesn't really get a lot of credit, but I'm the kind of person that will defend Section 8 prejudice to the death for the most part. I don't think TimeGate really handled it all that well. There were situations where they really should have gotten more hands-on with the development and the balancing of the game, but I found Prejudice's multiplayer to be awesome. We had a server for a number of months, and the guys would always get on and play, and we played 40-man games. It was so cool. They were also responsible for a really good expansion for Fear, which was Extraction Point, and the Kohan series, which was really great. And then, unfortunately, we had Aliens Colonial Marines. Doesn't it suck that TimeGate is apparently going under for this, whereas Gearbox is happily riding on the success of Borderlands 2 and is just trundling along without a care in the world, denying the fact that they were responsible for Aliens Colonial Marines and the disaster of the game that it was. It's pretty sad, honestly, but there's really not a lot you can say. They dug themselves into a big hole. The lawsuit with South Peak did not help them in any way, shape, or form. And, well, they're a failed company. I mean, none of these titles sold all that well, I'm afraid, and that's just the nature of the industry, but it is definitely sad to see yet another company moving into bankruptcy. I would have loved to see another Section 8 title, but that is unlikely to happen at this time. Let's be honest, we can't blame Aliens Colonial Marines for this. They were in trouble way before that, so I would love to just turn around and point the finger at Gearbox and say, hey, isn't it unfair that you're still alive and those guys aren't? And yeah, it kind of is, but it's also an unreasonable thing to say. There's really not a lot of evidence that suggests that's actually true. So just bear that one in mind. Sad to see them go, though. Very sad indeed. Now, let's do some more stuff about lawsuits, shall we? Everybody loves that, and this is goddamn ridiculous. So, the guys behind Scribblenauts, that being Fifth Cell, as well as the publisher Warner Brothers, are currently being sued by the owners of Keyboard Cat and Nyan Cat. No, I'm deadly serious. So they're suing for copyright infringement and trademark infringement based on the idea that these characters were included in the Scribblenauts game without their consent. So they were looking for license and authorization, and as a result of not getting it, they are seeking monetary damages as well as attorney fees. As to how far this will actually get remains to be seen. So when it comes down to actual copyright, they were only trademarked in 2010, whereas Scribblenauts came out in 2009. And there's a whole bunch of different stuff regarding Keyboard Cat and the fact that it was actually recorded in 1984 but only became famous in 2009, and the fact that it's all over the internet. You know, it's a viral meme. It is, for the most part, something that really can't be controlled anymore, and yet it seems that they saw Warner Brothers as a big fat target. This is what I really, really don't like, actually. That these are frivolous lawsuits as far as I'm concerned. This is damaging in a lot of different ways, and I know a lot of people, and it's really sad, I watched this and I'm like, what are you guys doing? We're celebrating the idea that Warner Brothers was getting taken on by the little guy, and celebrating it as a piece of justice against evil corporate monstrosities. No! The only person that's going to get hurt by this really is going to be Fifth Cell, for one thing, and they certainly don't deserve it. And secondly, think about the implications of if this bloody thing is successful. Think about it for a second. Scribblenauts is packed full of references to pretty much everything you can imagine. It's got stuff like Rickroll in it, it's got stuff like Dramatic Chipmunk in it. These are internet phenomenon that are referenced within the game because they wanted to make the most complete game possible. They wanted you to be able to summon pretty much anything and come across these really cool things. And as a result, they stacked it full of everything they could. Now, they did not advertise this is a key feature of the game. They didn't say, hey, you can play with Nyan Cat in this game. When did they do that? No, never. Never. Keyboard Cat? Absolutely not. This is the kind of thing that was eventually discovered. And bear this in mind, do you really want to live in a world where those kinds of titles can't reference popular internet phenomenon or pop culture stuff without fear of getting sued? Because that is terrible. That is a really bad thing indeed. You basically eliminate the very notion of hiding references and Easter eggs in your game, which is a nice little bit of fun that we happen to have as part of the gaming scene. If this actually succeeds and sets a precedent, then you can, without question, expect less and less of this cool stuff going into the future. And I think the last thing we need is less Scribblenauts. Scribblenauts Unlimited, to me, is one of the most creative games that I've seen lately. It's a game about madcap creativity and solving problems in unique and interesting ways. The last thing I want is to see that kind of creativity punished by people like this. These guys don't make a damn mistake. They are not fighting for the rights of the little guy. They are trying to make some money. They are seeking punitive damages. What kind of damages did Scribblenaut actually cause to the creators of either of these guys? None. Zero. There's no tangible damage done at all. They are looking for punitive damage. They are looking to make some money from this thing. Which is goddamn ridiculous, I might add, considering that Nyan Cat is not remotely original, in the sense that all of the stuff within it is taken from other places, including the music. This kind of lawsuit really bothers me greatly, and if you are thinking about supporting the creators in this respect and saying, yeah, stand up to the little guy, then just think about the consequences of that. Think about how much damage ridiculous and needless corporate hate can do. There are lots of legitimate reasons to not like Warner Brothers. This is definitely not one of those reasons, and Fifth Cell certainly shouldn't be being punished for having the audacity to create an interesting game. How dare they? How dare they? A popular esports league by the name of ESEA has got itself into a bit of hot water over some code that was distributed as part of their anti-cheating software, which turned out to be a Trojan horse, which held some code for a Bitcoin miner. This is very difficult to explain to those of you who don't know what Bitcoins are, and I've got to be honest, it's not a subject that I know a huge amount about either, but what I can tell you is that the code distributed turned the users' computers into what was essentially a botnet, which engaged in Bitcoin mining, which is the activity of decoding a massive cryptographic sequence, and it results in the generation of the virtual currency Bitcoin. Now, Bitcoins in and of themselves are worth quite a bit of money, so as a direct result, it is suspected that over $3,000 of the currency was siphoned off to a previous employee of the company. Now, the problem comes not only in the fact that these users' computers were forced to do something that they did not give consent for, which actually could potentially damage the hardware. There were users complaining that their graphics cards were spiking up to ludicrously high temperatures, and of course the electricity used by this. Decoding this stuff is pretty heavy on the system, so as a direct result you end up using more power. You can potentially even fry your hardware if you put it through too much. That's not the biggest issue at stake here. It's the fact that the changes in the story from ESEA give cause for concern. Initially, they had claimed that as an April Fool's joke, they were going to put some Bitcoin mining software into their anti-cheat, but they decided against it. Apparently, it ran a couple of admin accounts. They were then claiming there was a mistake, which resulted in this software being turned on for some users, and apparently it only ran for 48 hours. So during that time, they claimed that about $280 worth of currency had been mined. However, this is not the case. Supposedly, later on, they then claimed it had actually been running for about 2 weeks, which resulted in way more currency being mined in the first place. ESEA then claimed they would be taking the Bitcoins and adding them to the prize pool of Season 14. Which sounds good in theory until you realize, well, hang on a second, that just makes their league more attractive to everybody because it has a higher prize pool. Why should they be benefiting from this? They also said they'll be giving free 1-month premium codes to anyone that had also subscribed to premium. So again, not exactly much of a compensation to that, is there? They then later on stated that anyone that had actually had their hardware damaged by this should contact ESEA in order to make a claim, although Lord knows if they'll follow through with that. After being criticized for the idea that they would be adding it to the prize pool, they then decided to donate the cash to the American Cancer Society. And they also said that they would be matching that 100%, so they'd be giving double, which is always good to see. But I don't like the fact that they initially weren't just completely transparent about it in the first place. They claimed it was going on for 2 days, then they claimed 2 weeks, then they claimed, oh, well, it was some April Fool's thing, and then they claimed it was a rogue employee. So, I don't know. This was not really handled all that well. It's a really strange situation, honestly, because a lot of people don't understand Bitcoin fully. Neither do I, I've got to say. So, it's really very strange indeed. But I think the real problem is that it makes people distrust this kind of anti-cheating software or just any software created by these third-party leagues or organizations. To be honest, this is kind of past the era where the GameSpy client was a worthy addition to our hard drives, so I guess that less and less people are using this stuff, but cheating is still a problem, so something has to be done to deal with it. The problem is, of course, that Lord knows what kind of payload will actually end up being in these programs. So not exactly well handled there by the ESEA in a curious case of Bitcoin mining. I'd stop short of saying that it really damages the esports scene and means that viewers and players won't actually trust these organizations, but it certainly doesn't help. Sony execs across the company have given up their bonuses for the second year running after Sony Electronics failed to make a profit for the second year in a row. It's unclear exactly who gave up what and how much, because we're talking about the entire electronics group here, not just the gaming side of things, but it is, of course, fairly well known that the gaming side of things for Sony has not been doing all that well lately, and that is most likely due to the huge R&D costs of the PlayStation 4 and the inability to actually sell it yet. So no doubt they are expecting a better year after this, and indeed have adjusted their forecasts to indicate that for the first time in 5 years they would actually be turning a profit, which is always good to see. You can't be in the negative forever. But it's safe to say that there's nothing really negative about this. It's great to see that these guys are actually taking responsibility for their own failings. Maybe it's just a Japanese thing, but damn, it would be nice if Americans would actually do that. Or indeed just any Western company. We had way too many scandals regarding banker bonuses and so on and so forth in the UK, as well as some ludicrous situations of companies going bankrupt while the executives got so-called golden parachutes. So at least there is still some responsibility within the industry. Strange that we would say that about Sony, considering Sony's arrogance 6 or 7 years ago. I think they're rapidly learning their place, and they're becoming a better company for it. And everything that I've seen so far about the PS4 seems to indicate to me that they are learning from their mistakes. But proof of the pudding is in the eating. You can talk all you wish. I would like to see some results here from Sony. And finally, Call of Duty Ghosts will be headed to the next generation of platforms. Activision has confirmed that there will, of course, be a current generation release on November the 5th. However, they did not confirm when the next-gen versions would end up being. This is kind of piling onto this circumstantial evidence regarding the release of the next-gen platforms. The current belief is that the PlayStation 4 will launch in November. It's not known if the Xbox will launch close to that or if it will look to wait until next year. It would appear that the tie to Microsoft will continue, with Call of Duty Ghosts getting its first look at the Microsoft unveiling event on May the 21st for their next-generation system, and it seems likely that the DLC debuts will continue to occur on the Xbox going forward. Now, the interesting thing about this for me is that they're claiming that Call of Duty Ghosts is actually on a new engine. Now, that of course is a big deal because the engine for the game has pretty much remained the same since Call of Duty 4. Many users even pointed out reused assets in Modern Warfare 3 from Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, which is fairly ridiculous considering how old that game actually was. But it will be interesting to see if they're able to put together an engine that actually impresses this time around. I don't think I've been impressed by the graphical fidelity of Call of Duty for a very long time indeed. COD 4 back in the day was quite the thing, but not anymore. What interests me, merely from a speculatory standpoint, is the notion of how long they will continue to iterate on the current generation of machines. So they're saying that Ghosts will come out on the 360 and PlayStation 3. Will the next one come out on that? How long will that platform actually last? We've had a long console generation that is arguably very entrenched. There are a lot of those consoles in those homes. Will they risk, say, taking the next Call of Duty and making it next-gen only? Will they do the Pokemon, as it were, and continue to release those titles on current-gen until they absolutely feel they have to go next-gen only? Yeah, I have no idea how long the 360 and PlayStation 3 will actually last, especially in comparison to stuff like the venerable PlayStation 2, which really only stopped being produced quite recently. We will find out, no doubt, in the next couple of years. Alright folks, that rounds us up for today. Thank you very much for watching the content patch. Once again, I apologize very much so for missing the last 2 episodes. I hate doing that. There's a lot of stuff going on. Maybe I'll talk about it at some point. But one way or the other, let us finish off with the track of the day, shall we? Sounds like a good idea. There are a lot of variants of the Guile theme. Yeah, this is something that's been pretty much repeated time and time and time again. It's one of those classic themes that is frequently remixed. There are a lot of good versions of it, but I think this one is probably one of the best. It's by an artist called Razor. It does sufficiently different things with this theme. It's quite an old one. This one actually came out in 2003. So this is definitely an old mix indeed, but I think it puts enough of an interesting spin on the existing theme, which is in itself a very iconic but also very simplistic theme. It goes by the name of simply Guile's Theme RAH Remix. Thank you very much for watching, folks. Enjoy the music, and I will see you next time.